Okay, Centerra Ranch Montessori School. This is your website review teardown, um, and I am very happy to be doing this for you from not my typical office. I'm currently in Mercer Island, Washington, with the beautiful Washington and lake behind me and the view. So outside on the deck, my sunglasses on. I'm workationing, so so my schedule is a little bit all over the place, but I found some time to do another one of these teardowns. Haven't done one in a while, so Centerra Ranch Montessori School. Let's take a look at your website. So I'm going to see if I can get my drawing tools on here. Let's see. Boom, 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 boom. We'll see how it works. I'm using some new features for these recordings. So first, what we're going to do is we're going to take your website, um, and we're going to go over to Website Grader. SiteGrader.com. Oops. .com. And we're going to punch it in there, and let's see how your website's doing. Tick tock. Okay, well, you got a 69. It's not too horrible, but you know, obviously it's a C plus, right? Not that we use grades with Montessori schools, but I guess this website grader isn't powered by. It's powered by HubSpot, not by Maria Montessori, apparently. In any event, it's going to give us some helpful information here. Um, so what do we got here? So we've got performance 19 out of 30. Mobile, it's getting a 30 out of 30. Good on that one. SEO, search engine optimization, 20 out of 30 on that. And security is a 0 out of 10. I could have told you that it was getting a 0 out of 10 on security simply by going to your website, because over here, if you notice, it says not secure. Your connection to the site is not secure. So it's not like anyone is at risk when they come to your website. I'll kind of break that down a little bit further, but it is something that is actually important, or can be important. Let's see here. Pop up, get rid of that. Okay, so let's kind of walk through these different measurements. So 19 out of 30, so page requests. There's a lot of page requests happening. That's the main issue, okay? So what that means is when your page loads, the browser loads the page, and there's all these requests that are going to the server in the cloud, okay, through the internet. And if you have a lot of them, which is not an uncommon thing, it just means that there's, it's probably a WordPress website. WordPress websites are, the more plugins that you use or the features that WordPress websites are great because you can just throw all these features in there. You can just go to this free plugin market, get a bunch of tools for your website, and load up your website with all these great tools. Some of them might be paid, but there's a lot of free ones, and they can just make your website function and have great features. But each one of those generally sends more and more page requests, and there's a lot of things you can do even without plugins that create a lot of page requests. But in any event, when you have a lot of them, it just means it takes more time for that page to load. There's ways of optimizing it. You can have many more requests and still have a fast page load, but usually that takes like somebody that really knows web development to do some work to make sure that things happen in a certain order, or requests only happen when they're needed, when somebody clicks on them, things like that, so that they're not all happening at once all the time. In any event, that's what's happening on your site, so that's why your performance is 19 out of 30. Probably not the biggest deal in the world, but it is something that could have a small impact on how fast your pages load, and also Google will see that, and they might rank you lower if that's one of the things that they use to give you a better placement on the searches. And all of these things that we're going through all impact your search rankings. So just something to keep in mind. Now we're on the mobile section. You've got 30 out of 30 on mobile. So that's a good thing. That means that when somebody looks at your website on a mobile device, the design will respond to the width of the display. Now, it's just saying that you have a responsive website. It doesn't mean it's designed well for mobile. It's just saying it's responsive. I mean, it's saying that your website is set up to, change its display um, according to the size of the device. So that's one thing they're looking for. They're not giving you an opinion on the quality of your design or the architecture of your content or anything like that. They're just saying, okay, it is a mobile responsive design. It will, respond to the size of the display. So they're going to give you a check mark for that, and that helps because if someone's on a mobile device and they're doing a search and your site isn't responsive, Google will make it harder for you to be found because Google's trying to make sure that because the majority of searches today happen on a mobile device, so they want their users, the people searching in Google, to find sites that are helpful and designed well for that experience. So if it's not, they can see that and they will lower you in the rankings. So good on you for making sure you got a site that is responsive. Then search engine optimization. Okay, so this is the thing that may or may not really matter to you. It might be really important. It might not be important at all. Search engine optimization is, so as I said, everything we're going through will help Google decide if they're going to put you at the top, or down below. They might place you on the very first organic result, or they might place you on page 3052, depending on how their algorithm, decides that. So everything we're looking at here helps Google place you up there. Meaning if you're getting 100% on all those things, you're more likely to be found by people searching. The question is, are people searching? That's what you got to find out first. So I'm not going to suggest you should even do anything about all this stuff, by the way. So don't take this information and say, okay, we need to go hire a webmaster and correct all the things that Jono said. Okay, so with a caveat, all of these things only matter if there is search volume in your area, and also, when people do searching. So I want to just take a step back and say, what is search engine optimization? Why is it important? SEO, search engine optimization, is the modern day version of a billboard, right? So, as an analogy, if you're driving down the street in your car and you see a billboard, usually those are expensive, right? And you see an ad on there, right? That's old school marketing, still relevant for a lot of different businesses. Still works even for schools. Just, I'm just saying that's the old school marketing. The modern day version of a billboard is people, as the analogy goes, the street in regards to the internet is people going into a search engine and doing typing in, Montessori schools in Mercer Island, okay, as an example, just an example, or preschools in Mercer Island, or private schools in Mercer Island, or whatever it is, or maybe in the zip code. Each one of those searches is the equivalent of a street that somebody would drive down. And if your website is ranked on the, within the first few results, if it's one of the first few results, whether it's paid or just there organically, for that person searching, obviously they're more likely to see your link and go to your website. So it's like, right, the street and the billboard is the search keywords and the ranking, the placement on that page. So obviously, as the analogy goes, if no one's driving on a street, then it doesn't really make much sense to invest in putting your business on the billboard, right? You only want to put your ad on a billboard on a busy street. So obviously, if you've ever driven into, Manhattan or any other big city, right? You see, especially in Manhattan, I mean, there's just all these different, veins coming into the city, and you see, billboards all along them, right? Those are very expensive billboard placements, of course, right? Times Square, a lot of traffic, big billboards, very expensive. Um, so, you know, that's a good place to have a billboard. But if no one's doing a search, then it's of zero value to invest in search engine optimization. So before you decide whether you're going to put your ad on a billboard or invest in optimizing your website to be ranked high on particular keywords, because that's what you do. You have to decide what keywords, streets, do we want to be found on when people search for them. So that question has to be answered first. So how do you answer that question? By doing keyword research and doing an audit. So if anybody just calls you up, calls a school up and says, we're SEO, we're search engine optimization experts, or we're Google ad experts even, right? Then, and this is why you should sign up for our service, and this is how much it is, and it'll give you a great deal, and sign on the dotted line and give us your credit card. If they haven't first uh, convinced you to do some research or invest into the research process, which is not it's not a bad idea, right? But if they just say that no matter what, you should invest in it, or every school has to do Google Ads, or every school has to do search engine optimization, if they say that to you, that's your cue to hang up the phone. Okay? Do not just take somebody's word for it. What they should do, the way you know if you're talking to a good search engine marketing person or a search engine optimization specialist, is that they first try to do the research and do an audit and see if this is applicable. See if there's enough people in your area that are defined by the demographics of your customers that are actually going on to Google and performing those searches. And how many of those are, how many searches are happening, right? Um, of course, if there's a high volume of those searches, and you can get a good ranking, or you can get pay for an ad display or an ad position in front of those people, then it might work well. But what I'll tell you in my experience is that, and why we actually don't offer search engine optimization services, is because we just consistently found that many schools that wanted to pay us for that service, we would do the research. We wouldn't even charge them for it. We would do the research first, and we would find that, well, there's just not enough relevant search traffic for you so investing in it is totally useless. Just like, again, if somebody was to come knocking on your door at the school and say, you should have your ad on this billboard, you'd want to know, well, are there any people driving on that street? But that street is like miles away, and nobody drives on it because it doesn't go anywhere, right? It's a worthless billboard. It would be flushing money down the toilet. So you don't want to do that, obviously. So that's my spiel. I'm always saying that to people because it is something that there's a lot of great agencies and service providers out there that do very high quality Google advertising work and search engine optimization work. But for every great, respectable, reputable company or service provider that does that, there is probably 1,000 snake oil salesmen out there. It's a very infested little industry, and you really got to be careful who you work with, unfortunately, because there's just too many. They go after small businesses that are not, people that are craftsmen in their area but don't know much about digital marketing, and it's really easy, unfortunately, to dupe people into believing that they need whatever these guys are selling. And sometimes they do, and a lot of times they don't. So it's unfortunate stuff. So you want to stay away from that stuff. Stay away from those folks. Okay, so let's move into your website. Let's take a look at your homepage. Okay, this is your homepage, Centerra Ranch. Okay. All right. So my first glance, when I look at this, right, it's like nothing is drawing me towards any particular call to action. Okay, and the thing that actually sticks out at me the most is this orange box over here, this orange navigation, where it says about Montessori, about us, career, volunteers, contact, all that stuff there. Okay, so I'm not going to give you my opinions on your choice of color palette. I think your colors are fine. Your logo is perfectly fine. Your branding is plenty fine. You don't have to worry about branding. Branding is actually a completely useless endeavor for a Montessori school. You just have to make sure that your site looks like it was done professionally, and it does look like, you didn't have one of your little toddlers designing your site. It looks like it's probably a template, and it's perfectly fine. Now, as far as branding goes, because branding is like just basically inconsequential as far as how you need to market to get parents in the door, because branding doesn't get parents to show up for tours. You have to do is lead generation marketing. That is how your customers make a buying decision. That's how you get your customers into the environment wherein they can actually make a buying decision, where they can be sold, so to speak. I know you don't have to be a salesperson, you just have to bring them into, you just got to get them into your school. So how do we get parents into your schools? Because your school sells itself, right? They walk in, they see the environment, they hear it, they touch it, they see it, they smell it, they feel it, but they meet you, right? And that's the actual information they need to say, okay, this is where I'm gonna, this is the right fit for me and my family and our values. That's how they got to get there, right? So the branding, the colors and your logo and all that stuff doesn't really help them get there. It doesn't help them get there. What helps them get there is you are communicating, you're focusing on the values that they're looking for, and you've incentivized them to uh, go through all the labor and effort to actually book a meeting, a tour, and show up for it. So something I tell people a lot of times is that, and I'm going to take the opportunity to kind of discuss this right now, because we're looking at your website, and I want to draw a very clear distinction between branding and lead generation marketing. Branding, lead generation, two very different forms of marketing uh, that work uh, in for certain kinds of businesses differently, because every business has to market their business or their product or services according to how their customers make a buying decision, right? So I always use the uh, example of Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is, I apologize for the background noise. There's apparently some construction going on, so I hope that beeping vehicle isn't cutting me off here, but I'll just fight through it. So Coca-Cola is the biggest brand in the world, right? Hands down. Everybody knows Coca-Cola. Could you imagine forgetting about Coca-Cola? You'd think that's pretty much impossible, right? But Coca-Cola spends hundreds of millions of dollars a year performing branding activities, right? And the crazy thing is, if Coca-Cola stopped spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year on branding, then they would actually cease to exist in a year. Their company would disappear, which is insane if you think about it, but it's actually true. So, Pepsi would totally take over their market. Coca-Cola would cease to exist. Now, why do they do branding? Because the way their customers make a purchasing decision is, so they sell a very low price consumer product, a bottle of Coke or a can of Coke, whatever, right? So their customers are walking into a convenience store or a truck stop or grocery store. They're looking at a wall of 100 different beverage options, and Coke and they're just going to choose this like $1 or $2 bottle of Coke. It's a pretty small, inconsequential decision, right? So Coke needs to interrupt you all day long and try to get you to, develop sort of a feeling and a connection to their logo and their products. They want you to think about a cute, you know, fuzzy animated polar bear or Santa Claus or the movie that they where they had this Coke bottle of Coke strategically placed in this, movie that made you feel a certain way. That's how Coke, I mean, they spend millions and millions and millions of dollars on all of that stuff. And you see that whether consciously or subconsciously all day long, all over the place. Now, contrast that to how your customers, your parents, your prospective parents make a purchasing decision. Your parents have to uh, come into your school. They have to contact you or, schedule a tour. They got to make room in their calendar, maybe take half a day off work, whatever it is, or open up an evening for an open house or something. And they got to get a babysitter. And there's just a lot of labor in towards getting a parent to actually show up at your school for a tour, right? So, and then they got to get in their car and drive over or walk over or cycle over, however they get to your school. They got to get there and they got to come in and meet you and kind of be prepared for this whole thing, right? And this is not a $1, decision that like a Coke customer might make multiple purchases of Coke a day. Your customers are going through all that labor to then meet you and decide if they're going to hand you their child and, thousands of dollars a year, right? And with giving you the ability to have this massive potential impact on the future success of their child. So the size of decision between a Coca-Cola purchase of a bottle of Coke and an enrollment decision, two ends of the spectrum, right? Uh, am I gonna drink a Coke or a Pepsi today? You know, or hopefully a bottle of water instead, or am I going to uh, hand my most beloved, child to these people and put them in their care and, pay $10,000 a year on average and, you know, rely on these people to have a major influence on the future of my child. Like you don't get a much bigger decision. When parents are deciding to put their children in your school, this is a huge, huge decision. It's like who am I going to marry? Where am I going to live? What career am I going to, you know, put my efforts into and my time, and who am I going to hand my children off to give them the best education possible, and spend a lot of money on it, right? So if you're marketing like your school, like Coca-Cola does that make much sense? Does it make any sense at all? I hope it doesn't. Because let me ask you something. When a parent comes into your school and they are walking in and they've gone through all that labor to show up and have that experience, it's not just a physical experience, it's an emotional experience. I remember myself when I walked into my children's Montessori school for the first time and I saw everything that was going on in there. I was brought to tears because I saw what I wanted for my children, who I care so much about, right? And so like this is like if I'm gonna, I mean, again, contrast that to buying a Coke. Like I don't generally like see a bottle of Coke and become emotional and it's like I'm so thirsty and I really needed that Coke. No, it's really not like that, right? Um, so I mean, so it just doesn't make sense to market like Coca-Cola. So when a parent comes into your school and has that experience and they find the place that's the perfect fit for their child, and they're like, this is it. This is everything I want for my child. And they've met you and they've seen how passionate you are and how real and authentic you are. Does it matter what your logo looks like? Does it matter what color scheme, the color palette on your website? Do they care about that? When they've decided this is the place, I'm gonna bring my kids and I'm gonna spend $10,000 a year on educating my children. Does it even matter what the name of your school is? It doesn't. You could change and I'll tell you why, because you could change the name of your school and they're not going to leave, right? Would a parent leave if you changed your logo? No. Would a parent leave your school if you updated your website to a different color scheme? No. It means nothing to them when they're making this decision. It's inconsequential 100%, right? So so then what is the use of a logo in your website? What do you do with your website? What's its purpose? Is your website's purpose to sell your school? Is your website's purpose to teach people about the Montessori method and philosophy? Or is the purpose of your website to get the right parents to show up at your school for the tour? So think about that. That's a massive difference. If you're using your website as a way to educate people and brand your school and brand the Montessori method, then it's not getting parents into your school. Your website can do one thing at a time. It can only do one thing at a time. It can't do more than one thing at a time. So I want you to consider that, okay? If your website had to do one thing, what would it be? It would be getting the right parents that are the right fit for your school, that are looking for the values that the Montessori method offers or that your school offers, whether it's Montessori or not, whatever your school is, right? To get that parent, the purpose of your website has one solitary goal, and that's to get that parent to come in for a tour, because the tour is where the parent is actually getting the information they need to decide. Can a parent possibly get enough information from the website or from a PDF document or from an ad or even from a phone call or from an email? The only place a parent can become informed to the to act enough to actually make a decision is by being in your school and seeing the environment with their full body and their full focus and their full emotional availability, meeting you. And that's the only way a parent can actually decide if this is the right school for their child. So I only have a few minutes left, but so what I want to say is I don't know. I do see over here, there's this area that says schedule a tour. So that's good because that is making it very clear that this is how you schedule a tour. But I want to say this. This is clearly the main purpose of this website, to get parents to schedule a tour. Now, all of these other things I'm seeing here, what are they doing? Are they helping parents schedule a tour, or are they giving the parent many opportunities to not schedule a tour? I would say the latter. Okay, so it is true they need a certain amount of parents need a certain amount of information before they schedule a tour. Obviously, what are they trying to figure out? They need to figure out, does this school have, more or less, like, are they offering the values that I'm looking for, right? Do they have the kind of programming for my child's age, things like that? The purpose of your website is to inform the parents enough that they're they're seeing something that they should be learning more about, and it should be whetting their appetite so that they're seeing a certain amount of information that incentivizes them to go through the labor of showing up for a tour so that they can actually be fully informed. You don't want parents to hit your website and think they understand everything, because that is a shame. If a parent comes to your website and feels that they've got all the information they need, well, they're wrong because they couldn't possibly have all the information they need from a website, because the only way to get that information is to actually come with their entire body and show up at your school and see the environment, see the magic that's going on, meet you, be inspired by you. They have to come into your magical environment or they are uninformed. So the last thing you want your website to do is make somebody think, oh, I got all the information I need. Now I can go check another website out of another school and go do it. So what if there's a school in your area that isn't as good of a fit, but they actually did a good job of having a website that got the parent to go do a tour, and your website at your school, the school is a way better fit for them, but your website gave them information that made them think they knew everything they needed to know. That would be a shame, right? You got to be very careful. Your website is not a neutral element. It is either helping you or hurting you. So what you have to consider is my website bringing people in or is it sending people away? Because it's one or the other. It can't be neutral, unfortunately. So you want to make sure that your website is designed to make sure that this schedule a tour call to action is the most important thing. And right now, it doesn't draw me in. Right now, the thing that draws me in most is this big orange section here that kind of looks like a big button, but it's actually a navigation, right? And I would say it's not even, you know, necessarily the right navigation. Like this is probably too much information. So I'm just going to go back. Now you also have a thing up here at the very top. This is schedule a tour, but again, it's not drawing me in because it's there's too many things competing with it. What I would do is I would take this navigation and drop it to the very, very bottom of the page, so it's just in the footer, right? And get this call to action here to be like maybe up here in this big orange section. I'm just going to, if I could just rearrange the content on your website, I would just get rid of all of these navigation items and all these navigation items and these anything else that the user could click on. I would drop it down into the very, very bottom footer of the section of the website, and I would take this schedule a tour button and I would make it this orange and white color, and I would make that a big button that said schedule a tour or book a tour. And that would be when somebody opens up the site, right? That would just draw them right in there and be like, it would be painfully, abundantly clear, this is what I'm supposed to do on this website. And then down below, I would have some shallow depth information about programming, philosophies, things like that, but not trying to sell them on Montessori, not trying to sell them on your school, selling them, right? Again, whetting their palate about what you do so that you want to make sure it's enough information speaking to the right families that have the right values, but only giving them enough information, and then every time they're reading that information, it leads them towards booking that tour to learn more, because they have to come in for a tour to learn more. And if they call you on the phone, don't just tell them everything. Tell them a certain amount of information that answers their question enough, but also incentivizes them to come in for a tour because they need to do that. That's it for me today. Thanks so much for listening to me babble on. I hope it was helpful, and we'll do another one of these as soon as I can. Have a good one.